Hey guys, Marco the dog trainer here. Today we're going to be doing a super quick video on my favorite e-collars for training German Shepherds. Now, over the span of my dog training career, I have trained so many German Shepherds that I've literally lost count. But 99% of the time, I've either been using the Dogtra Arc or the 1900S. Now, like a lot of the other breeds that I talk about, depending on where we get our dogs from, they can really vary in size and shape and temperament. So it's really hard to just definitively say, hey, this is the best e-collar for this breed, because one breed can vary quite a bit. So that's why I feel a little bit more comfortable giving you guys a range to be working in. So that way you can kind of lean one way or another depending on what your situation is like. So like I said, the majority of the time I'm working with Shepherds, it's either going to be the Dogtra Arc or the 1900S. The main difference being the strength of the collars, where the Arc is a notch closer to the smaller end of Shepherds, and the 1900S is a notch closer to the bigger end of Shepherds. So let's take a closer look at both of these collars individually, just so we can point out some of the features that may push you one way or another. Okay guys, we've got the Dogtra Arc on the left and the 1900S on the right. Now we're not going to go over every single detail of these two models just because I've got other videos that do that, but we are going to talk about the kind of features that make them so ideal for working with German Shepherds and some of the key differences that may kind of push me in one direction or the other. Okay, so let's just start with some similarities here. So both of these collars are going to connect from remote to collar up to 3/4 of a mile. Okay, both of these systems are going to have the NIC, constant, and vibrate stimulation settings. They're both going to have the adjustable contact points, which can be super, super helpful if you're working with a Shepherd with like really thick fur. So just for the example, I've got some 1-inch contact points here that you can just screw these off and put these ones on. But they do also have other smaller sizes, just depending on what your dog's fur is like. And then both of these systems are also pretty much as waterproof as this type of stuff can get. Okay, so those are some of the features that just make them so helpful for working with like a working dog like a German Shepherd. Now, let's say that the first consideration you probably want to be thinking about if you're picking between the two is, what is the size of my Shepherd? Like, how big are they supposed to get? Because in a perfect world, I'm always going to start with which collar is just aesthetically going to fit my dog better. Okay, so if I'm working with a 40-pound German Shepherd, my mindset is probably going to be leaning more towards the Arc, because again, this is geared for the slightly bigger dog. Okay, where this kind of leads us into the second consideration, which is the level of stimulation, because I don't want you guys to get the wrong idea. If I'm working with a 45 or 40-pound German Shepherd, even though I may prefer to use the Arc, if I think that that specific dog needs a stronger level of stimulation, then I have no problem using the 1900S on them. It's just that, it's a balance between, what the collar kind of fits like on the dog and is it going to be strong enough. So those are probably the two main considerations that you want to be balancing is, how big is this collar going to be on my dog and is it going to be strong enough? So for people that are just really, really nervous about, the collar being strong enough, then maybe you just go with the 1900S just so that way you kind of have those boxes checked off. But if you're not super worried about the strength of the collar and you just don't want it to be super, super big and bulky and heavy, then maybe you lean a little bit more towards the Arc. So there is a little bit of a kind of personal preference in there. Now, the last thing we'll talk about is not necessarily going to make or break which collar I'm using, but in some situations it may kind of sway me, is that the Dogtra Arc, right out of the box, you can see it comes with these orange buttons. It can be upgraded to a 2-dog system like super, super easily. Okay, so let's say you went to the breeder to pick up your German Shepherd and you end up coming home with 2 unexpectedly. Well, you could really easily just buy a second collar and sync it up to make this a 2-dog system. Where the 1900S, it's just more so set up as a 1-dog system. So you could send this into Dogtra and pay them to add some buttons in and buy a second collar, and just a little bit more tedious that way. Or you could just right out of the gate buy what they call the 1902, which is kind of like a 2-dog version of this collar. So like I said, that's not necessarily going to make or break which collar I'm using, but if I already have the Arc and I happen to be getting this second dog, that may push me a little bit more towards this direction. So those are really all the main things I would be thinking about if I'm trying to pick between the ARC and the 1900S for my German Shepherd. So as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.